Hello and welcome back to the Now We Know Show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learned something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zach.
And I'm Buzz. And in this episode we're having a howling good time.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
See, that was topical. It's because it's October and this episode is all about werewolves.
Oh! If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, why not support Zak Wylde Productions on our Patreon page? Become an official ZWP patron for as little as £1 a month for exclusive early access to all our latest episodes, videos, behind the scenes, updates and more.
So last time we had a special guest in the studio, we were talking all about vampires. But this time we've got our special guest, Sarah Downing's back in the studio yet again.
For the third time.
Hiya, Sarah.
Hi, you guys can't get rid of me.
No. and she is going to tell us all about her favourite subject. Forget the vampires.
Forget the bats.
Forget the mirrored images and the holy water. Chuck that out. Get it out across the boundary line, across the threshold. We don't want that because now we're talking about werewolves. Right, let's go straight from the top. The mythology of werewolves. What are we talking about? Where does it start? Where is it from, Sarah?
Okay, again, it's mostly European.
Does European? Is that a good thing, or are we completely mental in Europe?
Well,
debatable.
Yes, although I think Englishmen are supposed to be the craziest of the lot, but there we go.
That's ours, huh? What? Stiff upper lip.
on to werewolves.
On to werewolves, yeah. Sorry about that.
So last time I was saying that there were vampire trials in sort of Eastern Europe. There were werewolf trials in sort of France and sort of Germany and sort of around that area.
A lot more werewolf activity. Yes. Far more popular.
Probably the best place to start is with the most common thought cause of
lycanthropy? Do we call it lycanthropy at this point?
You can, I'm not sure. I can say that without getting completely messing it up.
Go on, say it.
Lycanthropy. I don't.
Come on, lycanthropy.
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 All together, lycanthropy.
Yes. Named.
I like that. Oh, yes, right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yes, it's one of those words I can't say when I'm thinking.
What word's that?
Yeah, I'm not going there. So the term comes from the Greek king Lycon, who apparently tried to serve Zeus. Well, the king killed his son, and then tried to feed Zeus human body parts.
Right.
And Zeus was not impressed and cursed him and turned him into a wolf.
Okay. Could have been worse. Could have been sparkly vampire. A spankly one, even. I don't know what a spankly vampire. They turned him into a wolf.
Yes. Which is sort of probably the first sort of werewolf.
Kind of like Greek mythology, isn't it?
Yeah,
Greek
sort of
mythology.
Greek mythology. And then you get a lot of werewolves in sort of Norse mythology, which
yeah, we touched upon that in the previous podcast, didn't we?
Yes. With the Norse mythology, they turned into wolves by wearing coats made out of wolf
skins.
Fur. Yeah, wolf skins.
Yep.
Sort of similar along the lines of where the term berserker comes from. It sort of translates as bear shirt, so they're wearing
bear skins.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So, but basically, they are becoming the bear. If you we keep going about the Northmen, but there's a bit in there.
A really good scene. Yeah.
A good scene in there where they're basically really
becoming
the bear energy. They put the skins on and they go through this kind of ceremony of becoming the berserker.
Yeah. With the werewolf in sort of the Norse mythology, they attack travellers and things. Which, if you look at the Anglo-Saxon law term wolf's head...
Well, that's where the name werewolf comes from. Were being man, wolf, man-wolf.
Yes. But, yeah, under Anglo-Saxon law, it was Edward I believe.
Edward the First.
Anyway, it was before the Norman conquest. In English law, the term wolf's head came into use,
Right.
To represent an outlaw.
Okay.
And the idea was that anyone could kill
An
a
outlaw.
wolf's head.
Right. So it's an outlaw. If you, ergo a wolf's head.
Yeah. Because anyone could kill a wolf.
Right.
So anyone could kill a wolf's head as outlaw.
Back when we actually did have wolves in England.
Yeah.
still, or
The
in Great
last wolf was killed in Scotland in about the 16th century.
Right. Quite a long time ago then.
Yeah.
Poor last wolf. I have heard, we're going a little bit off topic, but I have heard about people talking about reintroducing wolves.
They've been on about it for a long while, certainly when I was back at uni, sort of. Yeah. So decades ago.
I don't think you don't know that one. I don't think that will happen though, will it?
No, a wolf conference I went to with the UK Wolf Conservation Group, which is no longer running, they were on about maybe instead of introducing wolves, which will cause problems if they get habitualised to humans, once wolves don't see humans as a threat.
They see them as food. Are you
great...
food or a threat?
Yes. And also in England we have a bad habit of feeding wildlife. You get people feeding foxes and then wondering why they get bitten.
Hey, Wolfie, Wolfie.
Yeah, anyway.
Would you like a chicken? It's like a chicken leg.
Someone was suggesting that rather than wolves, we introduce lynx, which are smaller.
Yes, I had heard that.
And they don't go after livestock.
No, they do tend to also shy very much away from humans. They just keep themselves to themselves.
The only issue I could see with that is the problems it would cause with the Scottish wildcat.
Yeah, that would be interbreeding.
Interbreeding and
they have that problem
and
with,
probably territorial, but house cats and
house cats already.
But
Slightly
off topic completely.
Okay. So last wolf killed in Scotland back in the 16th century.
Yes, I've probably got the exact date somewhere.
Gosh, you were there.
Just go back on the calendar.
She's going through a mobile calendar on her phone. Now, what date was that? I do remember. I was down at the tavern.
I think it was a Thursday.
I think it was a Thursday. That's it. We just had a touch of the plague in the village at the time.
No, I haven't got the date written down, but it was definitely the 16th century. Anyway.
Okay. So we had our outlaws, and they were referred to as wolves' heads, so they could legally be shot without any anything coming back on the people that have killed them.
Yes, where I suppose normal outlaws, it was only sort of like the nobility. It wasn't serfs that were allowed to kill them. So, but yeah, you can imagine outlaws running around wolfskin coats, and that's sort of...
Well, you've also got to, I suppose, this is one of the things that if you look, I find this very sad, but if you look at Google Maps and you look at the satellite image of the UK from above, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, but literally the whole landscape is just, if it's not urban sprawl, it's patchwork fields.
Yes.
And we don't have what we would conceivably call a forest in the UK. I mean, I know people would argue that you've got things like the Kill the Forest up in Scotland, and there's ancient forest in Scotland, but as concerning the size of these plots of forest, they're relatively small.
Yes.
And if you look at that Google image above the UK, as far as our woodland habitat, it's tiny these days. I don't know what the percentage is overall, but going back to your earlier period, yes, then you suddenly had far more forests. I mean, originally the whole of the island, the British Isles, were from coast to coast was the Great Wild Wood, and that would have been full of wolves and aurochs and bears and everything. And slowly that forest would have been chipped away when people decided to start doing farming and clearing land clearance, and using the timber for obviously making buildings and then shipbuilding and all the things that timberers need to use for. But there was a period where, yes, we had a density of woodland, and this is what we're talking about, where you could, they always kind of reflect this in films as well, you don't go into the woods. Probably very much like European folklore, where a lot of the fairy tales are really dark. The Grimm's fairy tales, the original. You will look at the Disney kind of Grimm's fairy tales, and it's all like princesses and all the rest of it. But an awful lot of the folk tales, including tales of wolves, even Little Red Riding Hood, was super dark, and the whole thing was you do not break the tree line. You do not go out from where.
Stick to the path.
Because if you go into those woods,
be safe and responsible. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten by a wolf.
You're going to get eaten by a wolf. You're going to get eaten by a bear, or any number of mythological type of creatures that might inhabit that
beasties
are going to have you as well, because the woodland, the forest, existed.
Theirs.
It was there. That's what we've got to get into our minds. That dense, thick forest that. These days, if you go to a forest, and kind of you feel, in the UK, I feel a little bit detached these days, because you can go into a lot of forests and they have like forest paths you stick to, and you experience
barriers.
Yeah, and barriers. You experience the woodland by looking at it from the path.
Look at nature from nice
but,
human ground.
But you don't really get the opportunity to try and traverse through a very dense, overgrown piece of woodland where it would be full of brambles and also, obviously different woodland can have different duff underneath the trees. Some of it can be quite open in broadleafed hardwoods and things can be quite open, and then
that's mostly due to the deer grazing.
Yeah. So the animals again would have an effect on the environment. And getting that balance, and then other forests are very dense, and if you get the pine forests, they can be really dark and dense because there's not a lot of light that comes into them. So you've got all these kind of things, and that's what it would have been like, but you don't really get to experience that in the UK now.
No.
Which you could do in there's large pieces of forest still in Europe, obviously. And
America.
And America is thousands of millions of square miles worth of dense forest.
Where possibly Bigfoot
could be.
Or werewolves.
Or vampires. Or God knows, all sorts of other things they've got over there. But anyway, talking about the werewolves, that's what we've got to think about, as you're saying. Dense woodland still existed.
Yes.
You don't go in there because of the wolves.
But interestingly, there is no werewolves in British mythology.
Really?
Yes.
Mm.
I know we've had devil dogs. Big dogs and things like that.
Yeah.
Demon dogs. But no wolves.
No werewolves, which is interesting because a lot of people think that the werewolf myth stems from rabies.
So why would we have the word in Anglo-Saxon, werewolf?
Probably because it came in with the Saxons, with the Viking invasion.
Right, bringing it in from a European influence.
Yeah.
Because if their mythology, if they've come from Scandinavia, Denmark, Saxony, places like that where they've got their thick forests and they've got that mythology with them, they're going to come to the British Isles with its thick forests at the time and probably assume that there
are those things.
Those wee beasties are just as prevalent or going to exist in there as anywhere else.
Yeah. But traditional English mythology, there's no werewolves, which is interesting because, like I was going to say, there's people think the werewolf tale stems from rabies.
Right, yeah.
Because you've got the foaming at the mouth and.
So wolves themselves, just like a dog can catch rabies, wolves can they catch rabies?
Wolves can catch rabies.
So if you've got a rabid wolf,
will attack humans. A healthy wolf will not go anywhere near a human unless cornered or, like I say, habitualised, so they don't.
Right, they're not scared.
They're not scared. But interestingly, we do. Well, up until sort of early 19th century, we had rabies in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So if rabies was the reason for the werewolf mythology, you'd expect us to have werewolf in our folklore.
Yes.
We don't.
Where people have been bitten and then suddenly taken on that foaming at the mouth kind of. They've been bitten by a wolf. We saw them get bitten by a wolf on that hunting trip or something, and then how long it takes. I don't know how long it takes for rabies to take hold of somebody. But that fear of water and the thirst and the foaming at the mouth and everything else. Then they think, oh my God, they've been taken over by that wolf spirit type of thing.
Yes. But like I was saying in the vampire one. At the time when we had all these epidemics sweeping across Europe, we had vampire and werewolf trials over in Europe, and we had witch trials here. The only folklore tale that kind of, it's not wolves, but there's a story from Devonshire of
Right.
two black dogs that used to go to the tavern every night and drink all the cider.
Sounds like another one of Sarah's jokes. This one. Right, there was these two black dogs. They just come in the tavern and say, "Can we have a cider each?"
Yes.
And the barman said,
Anyway, so
"Oh damn, there's no."
so anyway, the tavern keeper or whatever got fed up, and he fired a silver button over the heads of the dogs, and they turned into two old women. So obviously witches.
Witches. So witches can transform into dogs.
Yeah, there are tales of witches turning into wolves.
Right.
In fact, one of the folklore, certainly from Poland area, is of witches cursing people into the shape of a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
This was done with a sort of a belt made of human skin.
Right.
And one
dark.
story I came across, this witch casting a wedding party put this strip of human skin down on the step, and as the wedding party crossed the strip of skin, they turned into wolves, but she hadn't made it quite wide enough, and the bridegroom went over, and he turned into a wolf, but the skin wasn't wide enough to cover his tail, so he turned back into human form but kept his tail.
Oh, right. Do you know
That's freaky.
that kind of I'm getting a memory of what was that film? Oh,
Which one are you talking about?
It's a werewolf film. Which was
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I know there was. I know there is. It's a Red Riding Hood.
Company of Wolves.
Company of Wolves. That's it. And that's got a wedding scene in it.
Yeah, it does.
Where all the guests start turning into wolves.
Yeah.
And what you just I'm wondering if they based that on that
there you
mythology.
go. We've come under a thing now.
Are you familiar with the movie?
No, I haven't.
You've never seen it?
We'll have to watch it. We've got the Steelbook version.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's great, and it's got a real great transformation in it. It's kind of a bit freaky at times, a bit odd, but I think it's become a classic.
Definitely recommended.
Yeah, Company of Wolves. But
looking
it's only because you
werewolves,
mentioned
but a bit
about
different.
the wedding party all turning into wolves, and there is a scene. Really does make me think.
Definitely. I wonder where that came from.
Yeah. So you mentioned a silver button. Why would that be relevant? Why don't they say, he find an iron button or a brass button, or why the silver?
I certainly know silver is supposed to sort of, I believe it's supposed to break fairy glamour. So it could be
so
that
if you
link
got
with magical beings and magic.
Because you get the mythology of changelings, where they steal babies and put a changeling in its place, but the changeling looks like the child.
Yes.
But it acts differently.
And that would be a description of that glamour. The parents only see the child, but actually it's a changeling.
Yes.
And so that's when you say you break the glamour. Boom. Ooh, it's a changeling. Which reminds me of one of my favourite...
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
One of my favourite Christmas films.
What is it?
Are
you going to remember the title?
There are so many. There are so many titles that we watch. I don't, 'cause it's got William Shatner in it.
It does have William
Shatner in it, and he's brilliant in it. I love him. Lots of eggnog. Yeah, he drinks a lot of egg. But I can't... Oh, is it Christmas Horror Story?
Correct.
Got it! Yes! He nailed it. Christmas Horror Story. Got to watch it. Great Christmas movie. But that has got Changeling in it.
Krampus.
Krampus got good Krampus
Santa.
in it.
Elves,
yeah.
Of a somewhat rabid
I don't
disposition.
think it's got a werewolf in it, though, has it? No, because it's not that kind of Christmas.
No.
But anyway, sorry, we diversify, but that has got a change.
Save it for Christmas.
Yeah. We have a weird choice of Christmas movies. Not really, though, because they are Christmas movies.
Yes.
Anybody who says Die Hard's not a Christmas movie, you're wrong. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyway, carrying on. So you've got the silver that might break the glamour.
Yeah.
And that's why the witches transfer. Do you think, is that, from your research, is that kind of like the only or one of the early references to silver associated with werewolves?
That's the only one I came across in the books I was reading.
So have you got any thoughts on why we associate silver bullets with werewolves? Because let's just jump straight in there.
Yeah.
Silver bullets, werewolves, or werewolves touching silver.
I think it's a Hollywood.
I think because that's the thing. I've seen a lot of the werewolf films that kind of introduce a lot of this kind of mythology. Now I think silver came in a bit later. It used to be, what's the stuff? It's not mistletoe. It's the wolfsbane.
Wolfsbane, yeah.
That used to be the thing that warded off werewolves.
So what was
silver, I think, came in Curse of the Werewolf.
Right. Is that the one where it's based in London, or is that the one with
Spain.
Ah, that's the one with
What's his name?
Yes. Everybody's screaming.
Oliver Reed.
Oliver Reed. Thank you very much. You know, we're kind of coming in here, and we're like
very good underrated werewolf movie.
Yeah, Oliver Reed.
Curse of the Werewolf, Hammer horror film.
Yeah. So werewolves, silver bullets. It's a thing, but with the wolfsbane. Yeah, that was right there with Long Chaney Jr., wasn't it?
Yes.
So what was it? Even a man that's pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms
and the moon is shining bright. Which doesn't
mention
necessarily mean it's a full moon.
Yeah, there is a little argument over that because it doesn't say a full moon, but when it says the moon is shining bright, you kind of imagine that it has to be a full moon.
The full moon was again introduced later on.
Yeah, well... That's
in the movies. In the movies.
We need to ask Sarah about these things as we go down the line.
I don't think I found any definitive links between werewolves and full moons in the mythology.
Right, because I know, again, I have a knowledge of Norse mythology, and of course people can transform anytime they want in Norse mythology. I can't think of any reference where only being a full moon or a certain time has got any bearing on the ability of a person to transform into the body of a creature that they are transforming into. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly in French mythology, werewolves would leave their beds at night, sort of sneak out the window, and then they'd either bathe in a spring or a well, and then that would start the transformation into the werewolf.
Oh, right.
And then they would bathe again before going back to bed.
Interesting.
So
something in the back of my mind is that sounds familiar to me, which it does lead me on to my next question actually, and that is, how does a person become a werewolf? You know, is this something that they?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with Norse mythology, it can be something which can be a choice, but it can also be cursed upon the person. But in general, what kind of things or reasons why somebody becomes a werewolf?
Like you say, curses. I can't remember what the person did. It's Greek mythology again, but he had to spend 7 years as a werewolf.
Yep.
Again, he swam across a lake and came out the other side as a wolf. Mm-hmm. So that's that water theme again. And he could change back after, I think it was 7 years, as long as he hadn't eaten human flesh.
Right. Did he?
I believe he turned back into human, so he managed that. So
lucky.
He was obviously a vegan. An early vegan. Oh no, that was human flesh. He could have been eating rabbits.
Yeah, Norse mythology, there's stories about people putting on wolfskin coats and again being stuck in the shape for sort of 7 to 10 days. It sort of varies between myths. I think it was Poland again with the sort of the belts that made people
that's a thing.
werewolves.
That's something I've come across.
There's the story of a child who finds his dad's belt, puts it on, and starts to turn into a werewolf. And the dad comes home and cuts the belt off him and saves him.
So why, when you talk about the werewolves climbing out the windows, and which are obviously in human form, and then bathing in water to start the transformation, what can you remember why they're initially a werewolf, or what's the motivation for them to change into a werewolf? Because it sounds like that is quite kind of premeditated, that I'm going to sneak out, become a werewolf, go about my werewolf business.
Is it a choice, or
sneak back in again? That kind of goes against the I've got no control of it. The full moon's just broken through the clouds, and I'm turning into a werewolf behind the city.
Yeah.
You know,
that particular myth, it didn't say anything, but a lot of the mythology with the people, certainly in Europe, of people putting on the wolf coats, it was thought that the devil had given them the wolf coats,
right,
so that they could go about on his business.
Now, I wouldn't have thought in Norse. I was just thinking in Norse mythology. Of course, that would predate Christianity.
Yeah, so there's
they probably. I'm going to have to go back and revisit some of the Norse mythology to.
Interestingly, in a lot of European mythology.
Although I didn't mean to interrupt you. Some of them, it's starting to think. Some of the times, I'm sure it had to do with giants and things like that, because they did have giants.
Werewolves.
They did have giants, which were also kind of like witches, and they used to curse people and things. Or
Giant werewolves, no. Giant witches, that's fine.
Yeah, witches that are giants who used to curse people and things. So yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry,
I'd be
Sarah.
interested to learn more about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, the reasons for turning into werewolves mostly curses, and then like people going out on devil's business.
The devil's business. It's like
Interesting.
from the devil's wine cellar.
Also, in Europe, the werewolves, it was thought they didn't have a tail.
Okay.
So they'd run around on 3 legs and hold one of their back legs out behind them to fake a tail.
To fake. Right. So they looked like to try and convince people they were an actual real wolf.
Yes.
I've never heard of that before.
Yes.
That's a bit of a weird one. So the other way you could.
I am a wolf, really. Look, it's my tail. I'm wagging it. Look. Woo.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, I don't get that with mythology myself, but there we go. So the other ways you could turn into a werewolf was by drinking water out of a wolf's footprint.
Okay, as you often do.
Yes.
I'm often out bushcrafting, and I was like, oh yes, there's a footprint there.
Yeah, I imagine there wouldn't be enough water in there to actually.
I was going to
I'm gonna
say.
try that now.
Yeah, no. If you do that in the UK now, you're more likely to turn it into a badger. Because there are no wolves. There's a footprint.
Honestly, why did nobody tell me this before? I should have learned the footprint.
Turning into a badger. Damn.
I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised.
You're saying that there is one mythology about somebody. It was a lady. She turned into, I think it was an owl by rubbing an ointment all over her body.
Okay, sounds a bit kinky.
Yes.
You said yes very quickly.
Well, considering there was a guy sort of peeking through the door and seeing what happened, he then stole the ointment and nicked it.
I did start rubbing it on himself.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Expecting to turn into an owl.
I don't know what
he turned into a donkey. So go careful with your magic potions.
Yeah, I was going to say, size of a donkey.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry, you've never seen the Arabian Nights?
No.
All right, okay.
But
size of a plank. No?
No.
All right then. Somebody out there listening will understand what I'm babbling on about. Actually, no, they had a donkey that you pulled its tail and it used to turn into a whirlwind and knock all the bad people away. No?
Onto werewolves.
It was donkeys.
Yeah, because one of the other things with the werewolf coats is sometimes they applied magic ointments to their bodies beforehand, which again ties in with the witchcraft, because that's how they thought the witches flew. They used ointments which they rubbed onto their bodies.
Okay.
So, yes, like I said, there's a lot of overlap between the werewolf, vampire, and witches mythology.
So where do we get things like, where somebody, the old... maybe I'll say movie trope, but the old tales that if you get bitten by a werewolf,
yeah,
interaction with a werewolf, or scratched by a werewolf, but then you become a werewolf, you almost infected by that curse.
I believe that was a Hollywood creation carried over from sort of the vampires.
Okay.
Sort of biting people and making
the
vampires
mark
that way.
of the werewolf.
Because I think of the Universal horror movie monsters, I think the werewolf was kind of the later one.
Mm-hmm. So is there any tie-in with, obviously you talk about witchcraft and you think about things like Wicca and the use of pentagrams, and pentagrams are always associated these days with werewolves and lycanthropy, opposed to you don't really pay that much attention to them with the mythology of vampires, but it almost like werewolves and pentagrams go together from a witchcraft perspective.
I think that goes back to the folklore where sort of witches turned themselves into wolves.
Right.
I think there's sort of been a confusion with the folklore as to that and sort of. So
can somebody become a werewolf if they interact with another werewolf? Well, not another werewolf, with a werewolf, and then become a werewolf.
I don't believe I came across anything in the.
So what would be like the werewolf's purpose? We talk about vampires in the last podcast, where obviously they were for their own needs drinking blood of humans, sucking away life energy of humans. So what's kind of you kind of imagine a human being that transforms into a werewolf. You get the idea that a werewolf is more animalistic, more vicious, more uncontrollable, more But what's its need? Because a vampire's need seems to be quite fixed in mythology, the drinking of blood and things. But once you turn into a werewolf, what's kind of your purpose?
That really isn't covered in the folklore. There's certainly lots of tales of werewolves attacking travellers and eating women and children and other travellers.
Well, obviously, if we talk about Red Riding Hood, the wolf there disguises itself as grandma. The wolf is kind of
that would kind of imply it knows what it's doing.
Yes, it's like
it's
laying a
base
trap.
animalistic instincts.
Don't trust the wolf because the wolf. Yeah, they say a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. Don't. Maybe that's it, because a wolf can't be trusted.
I can't remember where I read it, because we were looking at folklore back when I was at uni, and me and a friend looked at the Red Riding Hood mythology. It was a fairy tale, and actually it was written sort of quite later on, and it was actually a warning to young girls to be wary of men that are trying to get them into bed. So it's not actually got anything.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we can sort of see how that would work.
Yes. So it doesn't really tie into the werewolf thing. It's
okay. It's that be mindful of the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
The man with a sweet tongue and the words.
The hairy wolf wearing a dress.
The hairy wolf wearing a dress. Yeah, I don't think that. Oh, what big teeth you've got! What a wet nose you have! Oh my goodness me. Okay, so we're coming out. We've gone from ancient Norse mythology and Scandinavian and Greek and Saxon, and we come into the Middle Ages, and you mentioned about these werewolf trials in France, and I recall I mentioned it in the Vampire podcast briefly about where there were reports of people being werewolves. I think there's a very famous depiction of a very dishevelled man with a baby in his mouth on all fours.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
And I believe, I might be wrong, somebody can tell me, but I always associate that one with the belief that there was a lot of that ergot fungi on the wheat that they were,
yes,
and then they were getting poisoning, and then basically because they were having that poisoning from that. Is it hallucinogenic at all? I don't know.
Ergot is.
Yeah, so yes. So people were accusing people of being werewolves because of that, and that was quite prevalent in France, wasn't it?
Yes. Again, because like I said last time, werewolf and vampire, certainly in the Greek, so the word for the two terms are the same, and Nosferatu, plague carrier, and like I said, there's a lot of plagues and things going around. So yeah, I mean, it could be sort of ergot poisoning, or it could just be an explanation for sort of disease and things. I can't remember exactly where in Europe it was, but werewolves were thought to be dead people that come back to life. They'd wake up in their graves, eat the shroud covering them, and then howling burst out of their graves as a werewolf. So that sort of ties in very
cool
closely
to think about. Yeah.
with the vampire and
zombie.
Yeah, like I said last time, it was thought if a werewolf was killed, he'd come back as a vampire.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said,
I think Jack mentioned that in the zombie podcast.
Yeah, there's a huge overlap between zombies, werewolves, vampires, which is
well with the mythology of vampires, where we kind of finished off, if I recall, on that last podcast, because you asked about reflections and things.
Yes,
and you kind of I'm sure we're delving into the movie mythology of vampires, but you kind of think of vampires being quite an elusive creature that may not even show up on sort of CCTV and things like that, and you can't be seen. But there have been recorded sightings of what would seem to be like Bigfoot sightings. There have been sightings of what would seem to be wolf-like creatures on two legs. Have you come across any of these? I mean, there's even been ones I remember, I think it was back in the 70s, where some Anglo-Saxon stone heads were dug up in a garden, and then the people reported hearing noises in the house. I think the lady of the house, I might not be getting this word for word because I was a youngster in the 70s, but they had this urge literally to get out of bed and to follow, and they followed this figure, and it was like a human wolf, a wolf in human form on two legs, and they followed it all the way out into the garden until it bounded off, and then they suddenly sort of came out of their, if you want, glamour or whatever, and suddenly the terror took them, and it was reported that
Oh wow.
people had this kind of interaction with werewolves. And then recently, I don't know if you heard of that one in Texas, Sarah.
No.
No, it was a reported werewolf, which was let me see, because I've got something. It was caught on CCTV camera at a zoo in Amarillo, Texas. I think it was last year, and
Wow.
it was outside the boundary fence of the zoo, and they got the CCTV on to basically make sure that. I think the CCTV was more there to make sure that they could spot anybody if they were trying to break into the zoo or not. So you didn't see that?
No.
Ah, right. Well, in that case, if you bear with me for a fraction of a moment, I know I downloaded the photographs of this. So
I'm really intrigued because that sounds like really.
So this was actual
recent
CCTV footage. I think because it was in Texas, they were referring to it as a chupacabra.
Chupacabra.
Was that
Chupacabra.
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 Chupacabra. Chupacabra?
Chupacabra.
Say it, Sarah.
Chupacabra.
There you go.
There you go. You
She
can't
got
say it.
Chupacabra.
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 Kind
I
of.
don't know. Anyway, so they were reporting that they were using that terminology, but when it
The
went,
goat sucker.
yeah, the goat sucker. But when it went global on the internet, then people were saying it's a werewolf. Okay, so I've got the CCTV image on my phone, which listeners you're not going to get to see, but you can look it up if you Google it. So that if you guys look at this, this is the figure that was picked up.
Wow.
You got the CCTV details of the camera underneath, and there's a close-up image of it
That's freaky.
as it went past. This is outside the perimeter fence of the zoo.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the werewolves from Dog Soldiers.
Yep. But that was actual CCTV footage that was picked up in Amarillo, Texas.
Creepy.
And that was about a year ago, which leads me on. Are werewolves actually a real thing? Can people change? And if they do change, are they doing it out of choice? Or is this out of, like, you get the
An uncontrollable urge
to become
transform.
Nobody on that, all the reports I looked into on that one, cross-referencing it,
Yeah.
nobody mentioned anything about the weather conditions regarding whether it was a full moon or not, just to point that out.
Right.
But that was an actual CCTV camera footage, and as far as I can find, I cannot find any reason that it was falsified or, made up. So there you go. So that's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what do you think about? What's your feedback on that, Sarah?
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to think werewolves were real because that'd be so cool. But I mean, it could just as easily be someone in a costume. So I mean, you can buy werewolf masks. So.
You can do.
Yeah,
You can do.
Like Bigfoot.
Like Bigfoot, yeah. People dress up as things. You kind of think that if people could do that, they do kind of do it more often. I just wondered why.
Yeah.
What would bring somebody to go out and just hope that the CCTV camera picks them up roaming around the outside of a zoo?
Unless it's like somebody who's like a security guard having a laugh or something.
Yeah, it could be.
Although the zoo, there's probably a good chance they've got security cameras pointing outwards to make sure nothing escapes. The last thing you want is a lion sort of getting out and
That's it. It was actually a new exhibit for the zoo.
Standing up on its back legs. So we discussed how the idea of what would have terrified people as a creature last time as a vampire, being this undead, malevolent demon spirit, family member reanimated and sucking people's blood, straining their energy and terrifying people, had become a very popular gothic horror kind of almost sexy creature these days. doesn't seem to be the same with werewolves.
There's certainly a very growing market of sort of paranormal romances based around werewolves.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I don't read a lot of romances. But
I'm just wondering why that is. Is it because of the animalistic,
primal
kind of? Is that what's so scary about the idea of a werewolf? Is because of that primal, teeth rendering, ripping kind of claws.
I think it goes back to what you said last time with cannibalism being so taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of werewolf would certainly tie into that because you've got
it's literally
it's eating human flesh. Yeah.
Whereas the vampire is
nibbling
nibbling in a yes.
It doesn't sound as bad now if you say
nibbling. Yes, I've just come for a little nibble. There's Tom Cruise sort of like standing at the window going, "Let me in." You have seen Tom Cruise as a vampire, I take it.
Have I?
Just what I'm asking you.
Is this
interview with the vampire?
No, not really.
Oh, well, there you go.
I've seen a bit.
Okay.
Something with a scythe and decapitation. That's about it.
Okay, fair enough. Right, so what else have we got on werewolves? Come on, it's Halloween month. We need to know about werewolves. Do they actually knock at the door and ask for candy? What should you give a werewolf if it knocks on the door?
Is this a joke?
No, it wasn't.
Should be.
There was actually a folklore story I came across. Woman, her husband had disappeared. She thought he was dead, and he'd been turned into a werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to get some meat out the storehouse, and there's a wolf sort of begging at the step. And she said, "Oh, I'd give you some meat if I was sure you were my husband." And at which point he turned back into a human.
Right.
Because certainly in folklore, that's one of the ways to break sort of a werewolf curse is by calling them by their Christian name 3 times, sticking a pin or a knife, sort of pricking them in the forehead. I would stick with a pin rather than a knife.
I was going to test to see if you're a werewolf or not. Jab. How do you know if they are or they aren't? Is it if they go ow, that really,
or if they
that
die,
really hurt, or if they get really angry?
He's a werewolf.
It's a werewolf. He's getting angry. You just stuck me with a bloody knife in the head.
Well, it's more than turning somebody back into human, so I really wouldn't recommend trying to stick
a pin into a werewolf's
or
head.
into a wolf. Generally,
yeah, a wolfie.
Turn into a person.
Turn into a person. Yeah, I think he's going to get slightly annoyed at you, isn't it?
Yes.
What was that you got about? They don't attack humans. Humans with pins.
Well, if you get close enough to stick it with a pin, you expect to get bitten.
Yeah, I was going to say. Then you become a werewolf. There you go. Well, actually, you did preempt a question that I was going to ask you. If somebody actually becomes a werewolf or is a werewolf, is there a cure for lycanthropy? How what are the cures? And obviously you just told us one, or two. You told about the Christian name. And what was the other one?
Pricking them with a
yes. Poke. Ow! Why are you poking me, Zach? That's my tum-tum.
I believe it was a Dutch folklore. You threw an article of clothing in the
threw a clog at them.
There's the story of a lady who threw her apron in front of the werewolf and it tore it to pieces and then turned into human.
Would you like to have a clog? Here. Stop. Don't throw your clog at me.
But yeah, the popular one seemed to be calling them by name, which it's kind of easy to break.
When it comes to movies,
you
have to kill the werewolf that bit you.
Right, okay.
Or eat the heart of the werewolf that bit you, but that's also killing it, so... Yeah.
So if you ate the heart of the werewolf that bit you, then that goes, in my mind, it means that the werewolf that bit you is still alive.
Yeah.
Whereas
but if it
isn't, then what you're saying, in order to break the curse of the werewolf, then how does it work?
Sorry, is this if the werewolf is still alive or dead?
If I was a werewolf and I bit you, you could cure your lycanthropy by eating my heart. But if I'm dead and I've bitten you before I died, then how do you cure yourself?
I'm a bit buggered. The only frame of reference with the eating of the heart was an American Werewolf in Paris.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's a movie.
With the killing of the werewolf that bit you, my only frame of reference is I think the original they mention it, the original Wolfman, and
the Long Chaney Jr.
Yes,
Wolfman, yep.
and I'm sure it's the same in a couple of other.
Okay.
Ginger Snaps.
Oh yeah, that was a good series of movies.
Yes, they go after Ginger gets bitten by the werewolf. The werewolf thing proceeds to get hit by a
Car.
a van.
Yeah, that's it.
So she's like, "Oh no!"
No, that's right. Oh dear. Anyway, sorry.
The way you told if a werewolf was a werewolf in human form, you cut them and the fur would be on the inside of the wound.
Oh right, so
interesting.
that's interesting. So the fur would then sprout out through the flesh, or their skin turns around.
Kind of reminds me like Van Helsing.
Well, that's it, where he sort of stripped his human skin off and becomes the hairy wolf.
Well, there's a werewolf cure in that.
And then strips his furry skin off to become back to a human.
The other
Although
side,
CGI, you can't. I've got to say this at this point: you cannot CGI a werewolf.
Practical effects all the way.
Practical effects all the way. If you have a man or a lady in a wolf outfit, if that outfit's good, if the costume is good, you've nailed it. Sorry, that's me just banging things. If they're in a werewolf costume, it looks so much better. But you try and CGI a werewolf.
Could you give us some prime examples of that?
Prime examples, right? Well, if you go back to American Werewolf in London,
oh yes,
practical effects all the way. No CGI there. Probably the most iconic werewolf transformation.
Freaky werewolf.
Yeah, and we've got that in 4K. Got to be 4K. And then you got, from the opposite end of the scale, that's what you just mentioned, Van Helsing, where all the werewolves and that are CGI, just look CGI. And in fact, some CGI kind of can, depend on the movie, can still look good, but that's looking dated now. And then one that springs to mind that mixes the two would be the Underworld movies.
Yeah, they're pretty
where
good.
Where you get the werewolves that are in practical.
I will say that the earlier films of the Underworld series are better when it comes to practical effects.
Yeah, forget the storylines. We're just talking about the way they've done the effects. But the practical effects, as far as the suits are concerned, are great. But then as soon as they do switch to CGI, it notices.
Kind of after the third one, it kind of gets a bit annoying.
Yeah, a bit annoying. Are you familiar with what we're talking about, Sarah?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of the Underworld. But yeah, I agree with you totally. CGI werewolves.
I mean, you get
other instances of really good practical effects werewolves.
Practical effects werewolf, I will go straight for Dog Soldiers.
Very good.
Dog Soldiers is excellent. And you know, one that I don't think that many people have seen, but I actually think was really quite good. Another little English werewolf movie, and that was Howl.
Yeah, that was a blend.
That was a twist on werewolf.
Yeah.
But they had another thing I like about werewolves is they give them the dog leg, where the leg the knee goes backwards, and that looks really good. And I know that in Howl they did that using what they put. They literally had them on. You know, you can get those kangaroo legs people bounce about on. They used a similar contraption like that, and then put green cloth round it to get that, and then CGI'd the bottom of the leg in. But it looked really good.
Another freaky werewolf.
Okay, freaky werewolf. Only we're not talking Ginger Snaps werewolf.
The Howling.
Oh gosh, that is
the first one.
The first one. Got to be the first one. Again, practical effects.
It's a freaky werewolf.
I was just trying to think of the character's name in that one. Oh, he starts off in the Peep Show place, doesn't he? And I can't something Grist. Johnny Christ, something like
that. But it's the guy who plays the hologram Doctor.
Oh yeah, that's right.
From Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, that's it. So the Howling, and he is the Doctor from Voyager. He's been in loads of other things as well. But yeah, you just it's Christ, something Christ. I think it's Johnny Christ or something. But yeah, the way he transforms as well, really good. And of course, we mentioned
Ginger Snaps.
No, mention Ginger Snaps, but the other one would be Company of Wolves, the transformation in that, practical effects.
Another one, Bad Moon.
Bad Moon, now that is a movie I've seen 90% of.
Yes.
Because we didn't see the ending of it, and in the UK we cannot get
It's very hard
Bad Moon
to acquire.
It's a really good movie.
Really good.
But there is another one that springs to mind. We're talking about. You can join in, Sarah, by the way.
We like werewolf movies,
We like
if
the
you
werewolves.
couldn't tell.
If you could tell. And it is Halloween, so we can talk about Halloween month. And that's Silver Bullet.
Ooh,
Silver
yes.
Bullet.
Now that's funny because that werewolf,
Have you seen Silver Bullet, Sarah?
I haven't.
that
Oh,
werewolf looks like a
We're
mix.
gonna have to have a werewolf movie night.
It looks like a mix between our cat Teddy and Godzilla 1984.
There you go. Yeah.
Pretty weird combination. Just
Yeah,
works.
I'm not necessarily going to say that is the best werewolf outfit in
I
that
liked
one.
it. It kind of looks more like a bear.
But the story in that one is good. It does have its jump scares in that.
Yeah, it's Stephen King.
Yeah. Silver Bullet. That was a good movie.
Definitely prefer that to it.
Yes. Anyway, carrying on. Back to our. So
Well,
we've got
where
our
were we?
mythology. Well, we're going. Let's be honest. We're just like with the zombies. We're going through the mythology, and we're looking at. I suppose can we split this into three categories? It's the actual mythology of kind of where the idea of werewolves come from, the movie and TV werewolf, modern mythology, if you like, and then as I showed you earlier, that little sighting on CCTV of something that maybe could be a werewolf. Kind of that drops into the Bigfoot sightings, if you like. So, cryptozoology. Is it an actual real thing?
We're going to have to do a follow-up podcast on cryptozoology.
Yeah, well, we'll have to get Glenn back in. Glenn, if you're listening, we want you back in, my friend. So, Sarah, carry on. Facts that we don't know about werewolves.
You're on about modern cases.
Yes, modern cases.
There's clinical lycanthropy.
Say it again.
Lycanthropy.
Lycanthropy. Thank you. I told you.
Clinical lycanthropy.
Thank you. Which is thought to be sort of linked with schizophrenia and some of the other mental diseases. And there's been something like 58 cases since 1985 or something.
And how does that manifest itself as?
It's mostly sort of people sort of thinking they're turning into animals running around on four legs. But there was a case in Florida in 2019. Police were called to a house. They found the homeowners dead, and 19-year-old boy sort of laying on the bodies, growling at the police and chewing on one of the bodies.
Maybe that's the werewolf from the sighting you brought up earlier.
Where was that? Wasn't Amarillo in Texas, was it?
No, it was South Florida, I believe.
Oh, right. He could have got a plane ticket.
Could have travelled.
Yes, but it doesn't cover just wolves.
Right.
There's people that thought they were boa constrictors, dogs.
I'm a snake.
Yeah.
I'm a snake.
There was one person, well, certainly one of the animals listed was a bee.
Somebody thought they were a bee?
Yes. Not quite sure how that one works.
Yeah, that's not. If I had a condition, I don't think I'd choose a bee. Yeah, that's a bit odd.
That's if you get a choice.
That's if you get a choice, yeah. I mean,
but you think werewolf would be the common
actually,
one?
you've spurred my memory again, because there is that other medical condition that, unless you Google it, I don't know the name of it, but it's where, because obviously, whether you believe in evolution or creation, or unless you're Jack, who thinks we might be coming from Mars, we obviously have traits in our genetics of our earlier evolutionary states, and that's why you have the coccyx, which is supposedly meant to be some people are actually born with a tail, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And that leads me on to where people, just general people in general, can be born that are very hairy, and then you get the ones that have the congenital hair that's all over the face.
Yes.
And so surely, I mean, we have that now, and I don't know the medical term for it, but if people in the 21st century can still be born and have that facial hair, then at any period, especially the further you go back, when people are far more folklore and far more, what's the word I'm looking for? Superstitious, thank you very much. They're far more superstitious. If you've got somebody like that, especially if they've kind of shunned from society and are having to live outside of their society and therefore live in the woods or whatever, then that would be a candidate most definitely for somebody being thought to be a werewolf, wouldn't it?
I'm not so
Do
sure
you,
about
you
werewolf.
know the medical condition I'm talking about?
Yeah, I like you. I can't think what the name is. But
have
I
to
know
Google it. Carry on talking.
I know there was a count in Europe, I'm not sure which country, who suffered from the condition, and he is thought to be the original inspiration for Beauty and the Beast.
Wasn't that originally called The Red Rose or something like that story?
I'm
not aware. I'm not sure.
Okay. I do remember a very old film that wasn't in English. It was all about Beauty and the Beast, and there was a rose, something like that.
Right. So we're talking about hair.
Yep.
One thing I do know about werewolves, or how it's been presented to me through films and media and such like, monobrows.
Yes.
Yes,
that is in the folklore.
That is in the folklore.
Yes.
Oh,
That
you
was
nice one, Zak.
That was one of the signs of somebody being a werewolf, was a monobrow. It also was thought to be a sign of vampires as well.
Oh.
But short, wide hands.
Short, wide hands.
So.
Oh no! Oh no!
No, you haven't got short, wide hands.
I've got tiny fingers.
How do you work this one out?
Tiny fingers. Look at my.
Look, compare. Look, right. Look at my. I kid you not, listeners. My little finger is about as big as both of theirs together. You know. What about thumbs? Yeah, thumbs. Look at these tiny thumb people. What are these tiny thumb people?
Oh no! You might be a werewolf.
I've got big hands.
Like I say, as I said earlier, one of the signs was if you cut a werewolf, the hair was supposed to be on the inside. The other sign was hairs on the palm of the hand. I was going to say, in England, was first sign of madness, hairs on the palm of your hand. Second sign of madness, looking for them.
Oh no!
Yeah, you did it.
No.
You fell for that one.
No.
You fell for that. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this, but it's hypertrichosis. Is the
excess hair.
Excess hair on the face and body, and you can imagine.
Very much looks like the Wolfman.
Yeah, if people are suffering from that condition, at any period in time, they are going to be assumed to be. I've got a kind of a theory myself. If we're talking about mythology, I'm a great believer that mythology, a lot of the time. I mean, I would, like you, Sarah. I'd love to think that there is magic and mystery out there that we don't understand.
Myths and monsters.
Yeah, myths and monsters that we which would be fascinating to think that existed. But at the same time, I feel that we have an awful lot of people with a facial hair or body hair condition like that, other people with dwarfism, other people with giantism where they're huge. And if you have lots of people which have genetic I wouldn't call them defects as such. That'd be wrong for me to kind of use that. But differences from the norm, and if periods in time those people were shunned from society or had to live outside on the fringes of society, and we're talking about a society where most people, again, we're living into a deep forested European community. If they're living in the woods and surviving off the woods, and then tinkers and travellers are seeing these little people or a giant who's living by themselves up in the foothills of say the Alps or something like that, folklore is going to spread from that. Those people, and so you're going to think of all these different sort of creatures, and whether there are fairies in the woods or dwarves in the woods or giants or werewolves and
vampires and
vampires.
zombies and mummies.
I don't know if a vampire, because obviously we have people are born who are pink eyes. Albinos, thank you very much. I've met albinos myself when I was at school. There was a girl who was an albino, and you can just see how people in the past would take those traits, and if people are scared of them or don't want to be associated with them, and they're forced out of society, that they themselves, those perfectly normal human beings, can become the thing of myths and legends. Yeah.
I kind of get what you're saying, yeah.
So actually, I do think that some of the things that we're discussing may well be the case, but that's different from it being a supernatural being.
Right.
I don't know. It's just a theory. I mean, because we know for a fact that in some of the Polynesian islands, isn't it, where there were very, very tiny human beings,
right,
that lived there, thousands and thousands of years ago, where they found the skeletons, but they. And I think this is going even further back, but I can't remember where it was. What was was it Pangaea, when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth? Yes. Was it the land?
Yeah.
The land mass was called Pangaea, and again there were islands that have got tiny dinosaurs on. You know, so rather than having the sauropods that are gigantic, they were like tiny sauropods. Mini versions. But they were mini because they had evolved in the environment that they were
It's like the Galapagos tortoises.
So if you've got people that are having to live and make up their own little communities in the middle of nowhere, and because like in Africa, I think, don't they have tribes which are born with a genetic defect where they have 3 toes? It's a bit like a ostrich foot. No, you're not seeing that, Sarah?
Not seeing that one.
All right, but I think those things to a society which doesn't, like, we work off of science these days because we have all this science around us just in the studio, the tablets, the
well,
tech.
we said in the Apollo 11 podcast that there's more technology in a phone than there was on the first Apollo mission.
So when it comes to the mythology of vampires and werewolves, that can encompass medical conditions and all sorts of things, as we discussed. But it would still be, maybe the word fun is the wrong word to use, but it would still be very fascinating to know if there was actually a supernatural side to all this that we don't know about. What do you think, Sarah, as our specialist?
Well, there's got to be a reason for all the myths and folklore anyway, and certainly a lot of it where there's similarities across countries. If the stories weren't traded, why are they so similar?
Ooh.
It's certainly interesting.
Okay, that's what we've got to discover. We've got to go on adventures and find the supernatural things, haven't we?
That's right. There we go. I've just googled up the tribe that have got the ostrich feet in Africa.
Can I see?
Yeah, it's they've all got these split toe.
That reminds me
ostrich
of
foot.
Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, where the person transforms into a seagull and then they transform back into a human because they're a witch.
But they haven't got enough magic potion.
Yeah, so
it's not enough.
Yeah,
not enough, and they've still got a seagull foot. There you go.
I don't know why I brought that up.
Don't know why you brought that up, but there you go. You're just reminding me of when we bumped into Gogglebox the other day, and they were talking about Frozen Planet, and they had the eagles that were picking up mountain goats and dropping them in order to, because the mountain goat, the kids. Baby goat's kid, picking up the kid, not real children, picking up the kid, and then because the kid is the same body weight or more as the eagle would fly off the mountain and then drop the goat in order to kill it. And then, which in a way, when it comes to nature, it's like, I'm flying! But it killed it instantaneously. So if you're going to go, that's not a bad way to go.
It's pretty brutal.
It was pretty brutal, but it had kind of like a bit of a skydiving thing. But and then somebody on Gogglebox commented, didn't that happen in Scarborough or something, where a chihuahua was taken away by a seagull?
Yeah.
It's like, how does that work?
How do we get to this?
Well, you said about they had a gull's foot.
Yeah.
And I thought, how with webbed gull's feet do you pick up a chihuahua and fly off with it? I don't know.
Werewolf.
It's Halloween. It's Halloween month.
It's going to be scary.
It's going to be scary. We get attacked by giant chihuahua stealing seagulls, pecking on the head.
On the coconut.
On the coconut. And they did.
And they did.
And they did.
That was a reference to a song.
Yes. Look it up. Anyway, right, back to the werewolves. We're having a fun time with the werewolves today. Don't eat maggoty corn or bread, yes. As you're going to turn into a werewolf.
Or an orc.
Maggoty bread.
I think the only thing I haven't mentioned is that one way to stop a werewolf that was chasing you was to jump into a rye field, because apparently werewolves would not go into a field full of rye.
Rye. Well, that's all right if you drink rye whiskey then, isn't it? You
just breathe on it.
Just carry a couple of bottles of rye whiskey. You come near me, son. That's it. Yeah, have some of that. So, okay, let's look at the movie tropes. You said about the eyebrows. Monobrow. We've looked at the full moon. Doesn't seem to appear in the mythology. Silver bullets. Well, you mentioned a silver button, which which basically showed the two witches up for glamouring themselves as cider drinking dogs, which is like, two dogs come into my bar, here, have some cider.
Oh yeah, but you pick issue with the seagull.
Yeah, I'm picking it with the seagull. The two dogs drinking cider, that's perfectly normal. Have you never been to Cornwall? It was Cornwall, was it?
It was Devon.
It was Devon. Oh, well, even more. You know. So the Devonish cider drinking dogs. We've got to do a folklore one on Devon, haven't we?
Yeah.
The hairy hands of Dartmoor or something. Yeah. So anyway, they got some folklore down there. So yeah, maybe I'm going to look up these two cider drinking dogs. Maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
That's going to be my job.
I reckon they couldn't afford their bar bill, which is why they were going in as dogs.
Going in as dogs.
How do they have? Do they have thumbs?
Opposable thumbs. Oh, maybe they poured the cider in a bowl and put it on the floor.
Did they sit on the stools?
Maybe we should invite them to us. We missed out a trick there, didn't we? We could have invited them to our cider tasting podcast.
Well, we didn't know about it then.
No, we didn't. Sarah, you're letting us down, no?
Next time.
Yeah.
Okay, so silver bullets supposedly kill werewolves. What else have we got with the werewolves?
Wolfsbane.
Wolfsbane, yeah. What other tropes do we have in
Pentagrams.
Pentagram? I mentioned pentagrams. Come on, but I'm sure the listeners are probably screaming at us again. What about this? What about that? You can see a werewolf in a mirror, supposedly. See it on a CCTV camera.
I'm just trying to think of unconventional ways in which a werewolf has been killed in movies.
No,
Fireworks to the eye. No, I didn't kill it.
I didn't kill it. No, it's pretty much silver bullets. What about decapitation?
Tell you what, really obscure reference because it's a film that's very hard.
I hope you're making notes on this, Sarah.
Very hard to actually acquire in England.
Okay.
Monster Club.
Monster Club. That wasn't one with Vincent Price, was it?
No, I think.
No. All right.
It might be Monster Squad or Monster Club. I can't remember.
Okay.
But I watched it with Jack.
Okay.
And a famous quote from it is, "Wolfman's got nards."
Nards.
Yes.
Wolfman's got nards.
They kick the werewolf in the nuts. Anyway, but they blow up the werewolf with a grenade.
Okay.
Completely obliterated.
Okay, so obliterating.
But because it wasn't with the silver bullet, it formed back together.
Oh.
After being blown up.
Oh, right. So have we heard anything in the mythology of a werewolf being able to reconstruct itself?
Not
Because
that
that's
I came
the
across.
only example of a werewolf forming back together.
Right.
Yeah, literally.
That reminds me of Bok off of the Daemons.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got hit by a bazooka and then reforms. Wow, that's crazy stuff going on there. And what was this, an English movie?
No, it's an American one.
So I think we've got to the point in the podcast where we come to your favourite section, Sarah, for the third time. Dun, dun, dun. It's our Halloween month. 6 quickfire questions.
Dun, dun,
Which
dun.
sometimes aren't as quick as we thought they would be, but that's the title. So tough. All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
This time it's werewolves. Woohoo! Okay. Question 1. What's your favourite werewolf character from film, TV, or book? Please don't say sparkly werewolves.
No, I did read a really interesting book. I brought it because I liked the sound of the concept.
Okay.
It was a romance. It was absolutely horrible.
A romance?
I can't remember the author, but it was a werewolf who went undercover as a police dog to solve his brother's murder. The concept was brilliant. The execution was horrible, but
Wow.
Wow. Yes. What on earth was it called?
I can't remember. I can't remember the author.
Wolf
I sort of
cop.
I read it once.
Wolf cop. That's a different type of wolf cop. That is. That's completely different from Wolf Cop the movie.
It's one I
They made a
read
sequel.
and actually charity shopped because, which is, for me, is very rare. I don't get rid of books, but like I say, it was a great concept, really poorly executed.
Fido Wolf. Right. Okay. So, but that's your favourite werewolf character.
It was, like I say, it was definitely a very cool concept.
Okay. And you can't remember the name of the book.
I can't.
It was
remember
that
the name of the
forgettable,
book.
was it?
Yes, but
Okay.
I loved the concept.
Okay. Werewolf becomes police dog.
Not the answer we expected.
No, definitely not. Okay. Question
I always
number.
like to surprise
You
you.
do like to surprise us. Question number 2. Would you like to be a werewolf?
Yes.
Yay! Yay! Sarah the werewolf.
And us
Do
the
I-
vampires.
Do her eyebrow? No, they don't. Her eyebrows don't meet in the middle. Okay. Well, unlike us ginger blue-eyed people.
Vampires.
Vampires, yeah. See, vampires, werewolf. There we go. Who would have thought? Anyway, question number 3. Do you think werewolves actually exist, especially after I showed you that CCTV footage?
I'll say I'm on the fence with that one.
He was behind the fence. Okay. Question number 4. In your opinion, what's the best part of being a werewolf if you had to be one? I asked you about vampires and you said it was being immortal. So I don't know if this comes into the werewolves.
Best part of being a werewolf.
Best part of being a werewolf. She's thinking, listeners.
The consuming of human flesh.
To be able to lick your own... No, we're not going there.
Whoa! Whoa! Okay.
Well, as long
To
as you
sweat through your tongue. Yeah.
Well, I suppose as long as you weren't eating human flesh, the whole being a wolf is just going to be awesome.
Just going to be awesome. So you can go running through the woods, chasing deer.
Yes, howling at the moon.
Howling at the moon, having a great old time. So, question 5. What's your favourite werewolf movie or TV show? Now, from all our gabbing, and I was saying, have you seen that, Sarah? No. Have you seen that, Sarah? No. Have you seen that, Sarah? No. I've seen a little bit of Underworld. Okay, fine. Seen that? No. This is going to stretch Sarah a little bit.
I really liked Dog Soldiers.
Dog Soldiers, yay! Is that your answer?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go, then.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. And finally, question number 6. Lon Chaney Jr. or Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman.
Should we ask why?
Because I know who that is.
Nice one, nice one.
Oh, by the way, it was Monster Squad.
It was Monster Squad.
Yes,
Yeah.
not Monster Club. Monster Club does have Vincent Price in it.
I thought it did.
Yes.
That's a very odd movie, that one. You've
Yeah.
not seen it?
No.
Oh, right, you need to.
Okay.
Okay, so we conclude now our second podcast for the Halloween season, this time on werewolves.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes. You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts. Check out the Zak Wylde Productions social media pages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. Please get in contact, we'd love to find out how you're listening to us. So get in touch in the comments and don't forget to check out Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon to become an official ZWP patron today.
That's a howling goodbye from Buzz.
That's oh! Goodbye from Zak.
It's a goodbye from Sarah, and I used to be a werewolf, but I'm all right now.
No! Yes, you had to do it.
Yes.
Yes, she nailed it. Oh, there you go. Now we know. Show. Now we know. Halloween specials.